The door is open.
Welcome.
I'm streaming in. I've started to hear something in the background.
Yeah.
Is it gone now?
Yes, it has. Was that you?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, that's right.
Were you listening to the radio at the same time, or?
I was putting on Trevor Nelson. Later.
Oh, there we are.
So, here we go. Yeah, we're all good to go, mate.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I've got that page up. Well, when I flipped over to Facebook, there was just us, and I come back and there's more.
There's more.
How many more?
And there's
600, I think we got.
I don't think so.
Well, I tell you, I suffer from math dyslexia. I see noughts.
When you want to.
Hello, everybody. Good evening and welcome to one of Macanta's infamous Wednesday case study webinars. I got another haiku.
Did you see we were donated a haiku?
Yeah. So
this is where Emma's starting to think, what on earth have I let myself?
I feel one of the first webinars we did, I got challenged to deliver a haiku. So I said, "Fuck you." No, I didn't. I said, "Yes, I would." But it took me a long time. It was last week I delivered mine, and I delivered it to crickets, to tumbleweed. I slaved hours, you know. They say when you write a haiku, you should go out and you should walk in the river and immerse yourself in nature. But anyway, somebody who was on the webinar last week, I don't think he's with us this week, he has generously donated a haiku to us. So here it is. What's going on, boss? Nothing much I know about. Let's check Macanta. And that's what we're going to do this evening. We're going to check out Macanta, and we're going to check it out with the help of Emma Collin. And in a few minutes, after I finish rambling, and Peter's given us my jaw dropped when Jericho, one of our developers, said that he'd finished this one particular thing that Peter's going to show us a bit later on. So I hope you guys are equally impressed. Emma's going to tell us a little bit about her business, and then we're going to dive into building a Macanta system for her business to show what that looks like. So Peter, what have you got in store for us this week? What have you been? What is your whip? Your flailing of our developers. What is it delivered for us this week?
What is it delivered for us?
Yeah.
You think?
By the way, everybody, what do you think of that sexy cursor highlighting? Eh? We've spared no expense. I said to Peter after last webinar, Peter, it's really great, you know, you kind of seeing you flying around the screen, but no one can see where you are. I mean, you're just like clicking here and then scrolling or whatever. So I'm hoping that you'll be able to see what's going on today.
Yeah. So just I think a couple of things really to show that the guys have been working on since last week. So what we have is, some of you may not know, but you can create saved filters, Macanta queries, where you can then pull up pieces of data that you need to have set up, and that then gives you the results, and you can work in that list. But unless you actually load the list, you're completely blind to what is there, how many there might be, anything like that. So what we've done is we've come up with some dashboard
Well,
widgets.
I wanted to do a drum roll.
You can tell we didn't rehearse this. And I never worked in the circus. So you now can add any of the searches that you build. You can add here. So go for test, for instance, and add the widget, and then you've got the extra one there. It's got the same restrictions as the Macanta queries, but what this will do is every time the page loads, it'll show you the latest updated, how many people do you actually have in that particular section, and then you just click on the widget, and that then brings up the results. You can do the work you need to do, and then.
So if you're an outbound sales guy, for example, your job is to get your new leads number down to 0 every day. It just gives you a really quick and easy way of keeping track of the work you've got to do with your data.
And then what you can also do, so we've got that there on the login screen, but you can also access that from where you're working. You don't have to sort of go back anywhere anymore. So we've got the View Dashboard button, which then brings it up for you right where you are. And again, you can then see the results, do what you need to do, because all of these fields you can edit whilst you're here in the modal, and you can carry on and do what you need to do.
That's like modalception. That was like a modal within a modal, and then you clicked on a contact and you got another modal. But it was pretty clear where you were though, so that's great.
Yeah, so that's one bit that we've added, is that dashboard, and then I'll just quickly go here to admin and show you part 1 of, so the dashboard functionality will be out by the end of the week. That'll be out in production. And then what I'll show you now is part 1 of our pipeline functionality, which will be developed over the next couple of days to be complete, and then that'll be out by the end of the week as well. So we've got, on your different data objects, you have certain fields, and if I can get this first time round, then my memory is better than I think. Look at that. So you've got certain fields where you've got different stages. So you can build like a sales pipeline with different stages for it, or tracking opportunities, or tracking events, anything, whatever the data object is. So what we've given you the ability to do is to build, and I won't go into the how you build this right now, but to build a pipeline where you can move. So we've got a field called MIT stage, and that's what's driving this. So I can then just move those different data objects to each of the stages without actually having to open them or go into them. So at the moment, this is only showing us the customer journeys for this contact with a particular relationship. So that's really useful when a contact has multiple data objects. But the work that will be completed by the end of the week is that you will have a central version of this pipeline where you can see for all contacts, and you can build multiple ones with permissions, so that if someone doesn't have permission to see customer journeys, they won't be able to see the customer journeys in the pipeline. And you can do that. And then just to be clear, we automatically create the different columns based on the options in your selected nominated field. You nominate a field that drives the whole thing, and then whatever the options are in that field is then the options that you get for moving these steps.
Yeah, and a couple of things to point out. Like everything that goes into Macanta, what Peter's just highlighted has come about from real world use of Macanta. It's not just, we didn't just think, oh yeah, it would be really cool to have a graphical interactive pipeline to be able to move data objects into different stages. So it's real world use. So we're confident that a lot of you will get value and benefit from this. And the other thing, just to point out as well, when we think about the if this then that automation built into Macanta, if you had automation, for example, that you wanted to run when a customer journey data object moved from onboarding and welcome call to orientation, then simply dragging the particular data object into that the orientation column will automatically trigger the automation that's relevant to that data object and that stage.
And also, just you've got complete control over what pieces of information is displayed on the card. We don't preset that or anything. In the setup, you get to choose out of all the available fields which ones do you want on the card, and you'll also have an edit button by the end of the week where you can go edit, and it'll then show you that item in its entirety. You can update it, close it, and move on to something else on the pipeline.
I can't remember who's on the webinar next week, but maybe we'll have an opportunity to build a pipeline for that. Great. So, any questions from anyone on what's on how Macanta has evolved over the last 7 days? any wow, that's amazing, or guys, pull your finger out, you're not working hard enough.
No,
okay.
fabulous.
There's obviously some stuff far more interesting on Netflix this evening, obviously. There you go. Yeah, great, thanks. Thanks, Gary. Knew I could count on you, Gary. That's cool. Wow, really happy with the progress. That's cool. Trello type, yeah, absolutely. Trello type. For those who know that software. Right. So, Emma, hello.
Hello. Evening.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm very good indeed. Thank you.
Right.
Looking
Excellent.
forward to this.
Yeah. So Emma's business is in the it means that it's a world that all of us are spending a lot more time in with this lockdown, I think, than we usually do, and that is food. Like, what is there to do? Like, work and eat.
Yeah.
And Emma's work is not eating, but is producing the food to eat and helping people to produce wonderful food. So lovely to have you with us, Emma. Just tell us a little bit about you, about your business. If you want to share how you've been affected by the coronavirus and what you're doing to kind of both deal with it now and kind of plans that you're doing for the future that might help and inspire people. But yeah.
Okay, so I set up this business in 2015. I was very lucky that I had a very nice premises to use, which was my parents' home. And it's basically grown and grown and grown to the extent where last year we decided that we needed to find another venue because we could only use it for weekends. So that's great that, the business is doing really, really well. And there is
What's the business called?
It's the Jericho Cookery School. And we're based in Oxford, and we also hold some classes in a little cafe in Oxford, which is very appealing to students because they don't want to travel because the main cookery school is just a little bit outside Oxford. So yeah, so we found a new venue and we were due to move in the weekend just before they announced lockdown. So we have our venue sitting there waiting to be used, and we're very lucky that the people who we rent it from have said don't worry. So we're on hold. We thought about doing lots of Zoom lessons and things like that, but unfortunately we're unable to get into our kitchen because there can't be two of us there. So we're debating what to do next in terms of how we move this forward over this period. But there is a sort of feeling that we're just staying connected with everybody, and just saying that we will be coming out the other end, and what we plan to do is be much more sort of orientated towards immunity and holding things that are much more outside and in nature, so we can diversify a little bit. That's what we've decided that we are going to do. So lots of different things. Yeah,
and I expect you've had plenty of time to think and to plan and to. Yeah.
The beauty of this is that you can, and this is definitely thanks to Nigel at the EC, that
Nigel Bottrell, that is, everyone from Entrepreneur Circle, just in case you don't know.
Sorry, yeah, no acronyms. He was very inspiring, and just use this time, become a marketer and not a doer, which we're all, very much when you're running your own business, and I'm running it on my own, you end up doing everything all the time and you never stop.
Yeah.
And this has enabled me to focus, stop, and actually think about and explore other ways to make the business work. So it's been helpful. So it's not all disastrous. Right. I never look at it as being disastrous.
Well, how can it be disaster when it led you to us? I mean,
I know. So yeah.
But joking apart, what did you see in Macanta, and kind of that made you think that it's worth kind of spending an hour or so with us just to explore it a bit more?
I think it's a mixture of Nigel saying, this is it, go here, look at it, because I have to be honest, and I'm not techie at all. I understood vaguely that this would be absolutely amazing, and there was no way that I could do it and know how to do it. So yeah, it was a win-win, definitely. Come to you, help me. I'm all for asking for help. I need
Excellent.
it. So yeah.
Cool.
So.
Now, yeah, brilliant. Well, thanks for that. It's good to know you and hear a bit more about your business. So you and Peter have had a bit of time together behind the scenes. So Peter, do you want to share what you've talked about and take it from here?
So we discuss you sort of do two types of events really. You've got the corporate stuff, and then you've got we struggle to come up with a name for it or a sector, but it's the individuals. It's the non-corporate, just someone wants to rock up and learn how to use knives or something. I had a look at your website and I was like, oh, I could go on that. So because of that, you sent some information over and we had a chat, and I then ended up, and I'll share this on the screen, I ended up building, as we do for these webinars, I build the basics in place just so that we've got something to work from, and then you and I can go through that. You can tell me where I've completely missed the boat. And we can add elements where we need them and go from there. So let me just get this back up here, exit away. There we go. So because of your business doing both corporate and direct, I've set up companies so that you can know when you've done events for a company, and if you do multiple, then it's easy to track and who's at the company, who's actually arranged the event, and then there can be different automation put in place around that. And then we've got the actual events, which we'll come to in a bit. What I wasn't entirely sure of from your perspective, how much information do you want to know about the company? And this is information that's static about the company, regardless of them doing one event or 5 events or whatever. Just what do we need to know about the company?
I mean, apart from the usual sort of name and address and contacts and stuff like that, not much.
Okay.
It doesn't, that is irrelevant. It's always nice to have a point of contact to contact people again, but otherwise there is no sort of mass filter at the moment on, on what the company does or anything.
So I've put in company name, direct phone number, and website. So we can go in and add the address, and then look a bit at what we've got there. So we go and do that. And we'll come back to the sections in a bit. So all I'm doing here, for those of you watching at home, and I know you're watching at home, we're just adding fields specifically to the company. That's the one that we've selected. It's the companies, and we're just adding some additional fields in there. Add another field, and then we say, what would it be? City. There we go. So we've got those. So then we can go in and we can just organize those a bit better. So we can, in here, I'm going to come in and create a subsection because I want to have company name, direct phone, and website to be together. And then the address details will be together in a group. So I'll just come in here and I'll say, this can just be details. And all I need to do is need to make sure all the ones I want in the same subsection, that I give them the same name in the subsection, and they'll then be grouped together. And that is case sensitive and everything. It's always, we're dealing with data, it's very exact. And then we can go address. And we can save that. So that'll put those into two groups. And the reason we put the address on the actual company is, even though we've got for a contact, we do have an address section and an address details. It's seldom, if you're dealing with a corporate client, that the person you're talking to, that their address is actually the company's address. Mm-hmm. So we specifically split those out. So if we now go and look at our companies, we can then see we've got the details here and the address, and I can then add a new company, and we can just quickly look at the relationships for that as well. But that's then where all the companies are, and I can connect this contact to it. So if we just quickly add another relationship. So I've already got organizer, attendee, and chef, but that's a bit more for the specific events. I'm not necessarily, I might work for a company, but my role isn't necessarily to be the organizer. So we can just go in and create key contact, so that we then know that is available for companies rather than the organizer of an event. So now that I've created that relationship, I just need to go and tell the system that actually that's available for a company. Are you ever in a position where there's two people at a company that is actually the contact, or is it generally one person?
Yeah, occasionally you'll get, there's somebody in accounts.
Okay.
Who's the other contact.
And in that instance,
is that another relationship?
Hang on. In that instance, the communication to that person is different to the communication to the key contact, would you say?
Well, I mean, they're equally as important in terms of I need to get hold of them sometimes.
Yeah.
Because that's you might have finished the event and then have to get back to them about something to do with money, whatever. So
okay.
Yeah.
So I think what I will do is I'll create another relationship called accounts.
Okay, yeah, that'd be brilliant.
Accounts contacts, so that you can split out, because it could be that one person is the key contact and in charge of accounts, but it could be two people.
It's usually two. It's usually, yeah.
So we'll have accounts, and then I just need to go and connect that as well. And accounts. So we've got that there.
Okay.
So now we can go in and we can go and create a first company. And we're going to say add a new company here. And we'll be us. I'll leave the address blank for the moment, and then you can go in here and you can say, well, actually, I'm the key contact at this company. And then I'm just going to chance it and see whether you're in here. Yeah, you're in there. So I can then go in and say, you're at accounts.
Okay.
And then save that. And that's then, when you look at a company, it's then easy to see what the details are, who the different people involved are.
Brilliant.
And you can then have, when you click through to Emma, you'll still see the company.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see that I'm an additional contact, but that's sort of where the company then lives from that perspective. So does that look okay to you, to what we need as far as the company is concerned?
Perfect. Yep, absolutely great.
So we go then and we have a look at your actual events.
Mm-hmm.
I've gone for event type, which is whether it's an individual or a corporate.
Yeah, okay.
And then you've got related company. So if it's corporate, you can link it to the company so that you can easily see, when you look at an event, which company it belongs to.
Mm-hmm.
And just for those of you who've not seen this, what we're able to do is when I set up the company name, when I choose the details of the field, I've set it as being a data reference field. And that means I can use all the values. It accumulates a list that I can use elsewhere. So for instance, we've just created a company, and then you can see that related company, the field type is actually companies, the company name that we have. So what that means is this will be a drop-down field, and you'll see that in the interface in a moment, that the list in that drop-down field will grow every time I add a new company into the system for a new contact. That company then becomes available as an item on this drop-down. So you always know all the companies you have in the system are available on the event, rather than someone having to type it in manually and making spelling mistakes or anything like that. It's a self sort of growing drop-down field.
And it'll become clear and obvious when we actually get into the data entry part of it.
Okay.
So then I've gone for class type, and these I just took off your website.
Okay.
So because you've obviously, the sushi for beginners happens on multiple occasions, but that's sort of the title of the class. Now, it's very easy to rearrange this in alphabetical order or whatever order you want. I just took them off the order which they are in the diary on your website at the moment, so we can change that later on.
Brilliant.
So that's so that we know what the class is that someone's coming to.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a class start date and time and an end date and time.
Mm-hmm.
Just because is the end date particularly important? The date and time, I mean, the date will be the same, but the time.
Some of the times will vary, but yes, so they're all always on the same day. They're never over, well, not at the moment, over multiple days.
Okay. And are you likely to have multiple classes on the same day?
We will be, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got that, and then I've just spotted a spelling mistake.
If you hadn't spotted it, I had.
So I added allergies, and I got this from the government website.
Oh, brilliant.
The allergies. I've also gone for other, and I've gone for none. Yeah. And I've made it so there's two things to note with it. One, it's a required field. So if someone has no allergies, they have to check none. Okay. Before they can save. Because it's the kind of thing that you want to be guaranteed someone asked.
Yeah, I know. When they book with us, they have to tick it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then what we've also got is that this field is contact specific. And I'll use my usual example for this. the best way to think about contact-specific fields is when we all go on holiday, we've got the same flight time, the same airport, the same arrival time, the same flight number, everything's the same, but we all have different seat numbers. So the seat numbers are contact-specific. So that depending on which you look at an event and depending on which contact you look at, it'll tell that the value in the field can be different rather than it just being one. So you'll notice I did.
Is celery really an analogy?
Yeah.
It's one of the listed ones.
Wow.
So you'll notice I did the same with the dietary requirements, where it's a required field and it's contact specific. So everyone is on there. So we've got our allergies, and then I've added a non-compulsory field, allergy, just additional notes. And then we've got dietary requirements, where we've got vegetarian, vegan, dairy-free, gluten-free, other and none. We mainly have those because they're the ones I could find when I typed in Google dietary requirement types. But you can see that list you can add to. And then again, there's other or none, and that it's a required field. You can't complete it without having that. And then again, dietary requirements, we do have a additional notes section for that as well.
Okay.
So those are the actual fields we've got for the event at the moment. Before I start putting them into sections, is there anything missing that you need?
Nope. All there. Nope, absolutely not. All there. Brilliant.
Okay, so we can then have, I'm going to create a subsection, event details. And then here we'll say and you can see on the relationships, we've got organizer, attendee, and chef. Okay.
Yep.
And if I then go and save that. Eugene had a question. Am I right in thinking in the flight analogy that someone's meal choice would not be contact specific? It would be, because if my brother and I fly together, I eat anything. He's vegetarian and shellfish will kill him. So the dietary requirement is very much contact specific. And I don't want to eat salad because he's eating salad. So now we can go and have a look at events. And we'll see the layout for that. And we've got event type, related, company, class type, start and end time. And then you've got the specific fields. These ones they're highlighted with the orange line because they are contact specific. So you can, just at a glance, it's really easy to note which one should stand out. The reason I've made them checkboxes rather than drop downs is because I can imagine that someone could have two allergies. And it's important to know as much as we can.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and I've left what was these additional descriptions were part of the government website, so I just put that in for the moment. You can obviously change that as you need to. So let's say I'm going to be the organizer that's booking an event for our company. So what I can now do is we know from up here that we're looking at my contact record at the moment, and I'll say add a new event. The event type in this instance that we'll say corporate. The related company, Macanta software, is already available as an option in that list. I'm going to go for that one. The day will come when we can leave the house and go and do this stuff.
Yeah.
We'll be there. So we're going to do that.
We'll be there for your grand opening. Are you having a...
Absolutely. You'll be there for sure.
So that was on the 5th of May, and we're going to finish late into the night. We're not going home early. I have no allergy.
That's before. That's 5 hours before the start time.
Well, I just went by the last time on PM on the clock. Yeah.
Well, 12 PM is in the afternoon, so that end time is 5 hours before the start time.
Okay, let's do that. Well, we can be there till midday.
Or the following day.
Comment from Gary: intolerances are not in dietary requirements.
Yeah, it's more for Emma. Yeah. Gary said, "Would you have a field for intolerances? Are they different to dietary requirements?"
No. Well, they usually tell us if they have them, but the allergy is the main thing. That's allergy is the spike, and then the intolerance is we're used to dealing with them all.
Yeah, and I imagine the intolerances you can list in the additional notes.
Yeah.
Rather than have the specific, but again, you saw how easy it was for me to add the address fields for the company. It's just as easy to add fields for this.
Thanks for your input, Gary.
So I have no allergies, and
You're a vegetarian, aren't you?
Yeah. at least the food I eat might have been vegetarian, but and then we can say, okay, I am the organizer, but I'm also coming to the event. So I'm the organizer and an attendee, and we save that. And now we can see there, that's that event that I'm going to come to. And then we can say, well, actually, we know that in advance, we're going to book another one. There was another one that I thought looked really good.
Which one?
Traditional Korean street food would be awesome.
Yeah, you want to go and do that? Where's that?
Further down.
Yeah, let's go and do that. I've actually
got some amazing classes there.
I wanted mastering knife skills. That's what.
Okay.
Very popular with men.
So we're going to do that a bit later. And I'll try, yeah, that's good. I can do better at the 24-hour clock. Stumble home with a couple of new knives. Do you sell knives at these trainings?
No, we recommend knives to people.
Oh, fabulous.
And they're not expensive. So it's interesting. Everybody thinks you've got to spend a lot of money and you don't.
Mine's 10 years old and showing it.
Well, maybe. It's just about sharpening it then.
Organizer, attendee, and we can save that. So now what you have is you can see both those events when looking at my record.
Brilliant.
There. And obviously the date and time is there. We can add some of the other fields there, but at least you've got those, you know when it is.
Yeah.
And then we can now start adding attendees.
It's probably worth pointing out for people watching now and later that what Peter's just done there in the interface can just as easily be created from an online, if you've got an online booking system where people are booking onto courses on your website, then you can use the Macanta API to flow through and create the data automatically.
Yeah, so I know you use, is it WooCommerce you use, Emma?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we can plug that in via Zapier more than likely, so that and how this will work is and that's more for the individual, because you and I discussed that for the corporate, it's more over the phone, or it's interaction. They don't just sort of book that online for 20 people necessarily. So for the individuals, how it would happen is when you list a class on your website for a particular date, the first person to book that class will automatically then create that event in your system in Macanta.
Okay.
Subsequently, anyone else who books onto the same class, as in the particular same class, same day, everything, will be connected to that existing one, so that, and I'll add an additional contact in a moment, but what that will then do, if you've got 15 people booked onto a class, individuals, when you look at it in the system, you'll see those 15 people and all their details.
Okay, great. Wonderful.
Gary is asking, would it work with Google Calendar or Outlook Calendar to sync appointments via email addresses? The short answer is yes, you would do that, again, using the API, and you then just have to decide which way around you're doing it. Do you create it in Macanta, and that pushes the appointment into Outlook or Google, or is it that you're using the Google Calendar, you book something there, and then you want it to push into Macanta for the relevant people? But that is certainly certainly possible. Claire is saying she can't see any of the questions.
Oh, yes, Claire, the questions that other people are asking us are just coming to us. That's why we read them out, just to make sure that everyone knows what's being asked.
And if you want to ask a question, then you obviously know where to do that. I was about to tell you it's in the chat, but you just made that comment in the chat.
That's very meta.
Yes. So let's say we want to, because we don't have WooCommerce integrated, but we're going to add a new guy. And what I can now do is I can go to events, and I can say I want to connect him to an existing event, and I can then see here corporate Flavors of Sicily on that date. That's the event I want him to go to. He's going to be the attendee, and connect that. And then we can also go in and say Martha with a W. And I can do the same, go to events, add to an existing, and I'll pick the same one, but I'm going to make Martha the chef.
She's got some mean knife skills, man.
Yeah, don't mess with her. You see no claws. So now, I believe, do I need to refresh?
Just click it. You hadn't selected it.
Had I not? I think I know how to use this by now, wouldn't you?
It's late-ish.
Is the auto selection, Peter, of the top one only staging at the moment? Okay.
So they can now see, I'm looking at Martha's contact, so Martha will be top of the list. She's the chef, but I can see that Peter's the organizer and attendee, and Erwin is also an attendee for those. And that's really just how you would drive those along. And that's then, if we go in here and we create an additional company, that's that we were talking about earlier. If I were to add an additional company, then this drop down here will have an additional company added to it for that.
Let's do it just to show. It only takes a couple of seconds to add a company. So find another. She works for Jericho.
Yeah, so I'll do that. So company name is it the Jericho?
Yeah.
Jericho Kitchen.
Jericho Kitchen, Cookery School.
All the spellings correct.
Is there a special meaning to the company name, Emma?
Yeah, Jericho is actually where I live, in an area of Oxford, and we found a venue here, but it turned out it had an asbestos roof, so we couldn't use it. It was too expensive to get it sorted. So it was okay at the beginning when we were going to be here, and then it stuck. So, and now it's probably just called the Jericho Kitchen. So.
And
I had no idea there was someone called Jericho in the UK.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the place they marched around so many times and then the walls came.
Yeah.
You were paying attention at Sunday school, obviously.
Phone number, just so I can put it in.
The mobile number?
Or the company number.
It's only this one, so it's 077.
Yep.
53.
53.
Yeah. 31.
Yeah.
66. 80.
Okay, so I'll leave it at that, and I'm going to say that. So in this instance, it's a key contact. Let's do that. And I go save. And then just to update the list, we refresh. And under events, I can now see that the other one's available too.
Great.
So
we've had a couple of questions in, Peter. I don't know if you want to address those. One from Gary further up.
From Gary further up.
About syncing appointments.
Yeah, I've already done that. Were you not paying attention?
No, probably not.
Eugene saying, could emails be sent out automatically confirming event details plus reminders 3 days before an event and 1 day before? And would it matter if that contact was booked into 8 different events? Could the email still be set up in this way? Brilliant question. And it's one of the big differences between Macanta and any of the CRMs we've worked in before is generally CRMs, the automation is contact centric. So it's all driven by the individual, whereas for us, the automation will be driven by the event. So you set up once those reminders, the confirmation, the 3 day, the 1 day reminders, and then I can book onto 10 events over the next 6 months. It's those individual events that will drive those emails. So let's say
your relationship.
Yeah, my relationship to it. But let's say I have 2 events within 3 days. I will receive multiple emails over the upcoming 3 days because it's always the date of the event that's driving that communication. And just to be clear, what Pete mentioned about the relationship is we've got a chef here that we can build. Obviously, we want confirmation and maybe the day before reminder, but not necessarily more than that. An email specifically with the right language can go to the chef based on that. The organizer can get email that specifically talks about your company's event and then what it is, and you can merge the values in. And we might build an email just so you can see. And then for the attendees, you can send again saying that different language depending on what the relationship is. So the automation is completely driven by this data object, and who receives that, the output of that automation will be based on these relationships.
Can I ask a question about vouchers?
Yes, you can.
So when people book vouchers as a present, until that person or until the recipient books it, I don't know who they are, And it would be great if there's a way of doing that as well, so that we send a reminder to the person who's booked a voucher for a person who might not have booked yet.
So just explain to me a bit more about the voucher. Am I getting a voucher for a value, or am I getting a voucher for a particular type of class, or am I getting a voucher for a very specific class on a specific day?
So it could be either way. So if they book a class, then that's fine, because they booked onto it, so they will get the reminder. But if they're just booking a voucher for a certain amount that is then, you know, somebody's got to cash in at some point, then that's always a bit of a tricky area to, you know, to get that information to them, that they've maybe only got sort of another 2 months or something of that the voucher is valid for. So that would be amazing if we can write to remind them.
Yeah, so what I would do in that instance, because my voucher for the most part is, it's a layer removed from the event that I end up coming to. So they're not directly tied. So what I would do in that instance is I would create another data object here called vouchers.
Okay. Yeah.
So that then how long is a voucher valid for?
So it's valid for normally a year. At the moment we're doing it, so it's valid for a year plus the amount of time until we start up again, if you see what I mean. So a year.
Yeah, so what that would do is we can then automate all around that, so that when I book a voucher, I give you two people's information. Mine, I'm the person who bought the voucher, and this is who the voucher is for.
Okay, great.
So you can send a thank you to me for booking the voucher, and you can then send an email to Pete saying, hey, new voucher, here's a link to all our classes, pick one. Amazing. And you can 3 months later
remind
the reminders, and hey, your voucher's running out, and anything like that. So we can certainly do that.
Fab. Thank you.
So a couple more questions. Can you get a read receipt confirmation of those automated emails? I'm going to say no at this stage. It's not there. The SendGrid who we're using for the delivery of the emails would have that, but we're not pulling that into Macanta at the moment. So if the daily report, Gary, relates to those read receipts, then no, at the moment that's not visible. Whilst that data exists, we're not doing anything and pulling it into the system at the moment for that. So as a next step, do we want to build a simple email just so that you can see where that's done, how that's done?
Yeah, we've not done an email building yet. So that's
which brings us on to a key piece. In different CRMs, there are different things that contacts subscribe to. So, for instance, you can either just blanket unsubscribe and then you won't hear from anyone. The problem with that is always you're then also unsubscribed from transactional emails. And I know in some platforms it's really difficult to say, well, I want transactional emails because I've bought something from you, but I don't want your marketing emails. And a lot of platforms make it a bit tricky to try and unsubscribe. So some do it as lists. You belong to a particular list. The way we have it is, if you are going to drive automated emails with a particular data object, then the subscription is really the data object type. So if I'm in companies and I'm in events, if I unsubscribe from an event email, then I've unsubscribed from receiving emails about events, but I can still receive emails about companies. So if I'm the organizer, I can still, and I can, of course, it can be the other way around, or I unsubscribe from both. But any item that you want, data object that you want to drive emails with, needs a special field, which we can go and add. And we can, if I go and add it for events, I can add a field, and it's going to be opt-in, I believe it is, and a radio button, or yes and no, and I'm going to put this in a different section called tracking, and it is contact specific. So this will allow each attendee, each contact to unsubscribe from emails. What might catch you out and you get frustrated by is you've built it all and it's all running, but the emails aren't being sent. If a data object doesn't have this field, Macanta will not send emails for that triggered by that particular data object type. So for the moment, we're not going to trigger stuff from companies, so we leave that. But for events, we'll add this field in.
So just thinking about usability, that might be worth having a checkbox or some way of saying, do you want to send emails for this data object? It's just yes or no, and that automatically adds the
field in the background.
Adds that contact specific field, yeah.
So if we go to automation, let's say we want to look at a confirmation email, for instance, when someone is booked. Now, we came up with this before the webinar last time because Jan asked, why do I build the automation back to front? Because these are all the options we have, and I always build from the right over to the left. And just a quick explanation, the reason for that is when you want to drive somewhere, the first thing you have to do is open the car door. And then you sit down, safety belt, start the car, put it in gear, and off you go.
Oh, you love that. No, just cack-handed, Gary.
But when they designed your car, they didn't start with the door handle. And it's the same thing here. I'm starting with essentially the chassis and the engine and the wheels, and eventually we end up with the door handle so you can open the door and get in the car and drive. But we don't we don't use a car in the order that it was designed, and it's the same here. The automation flows from left to right, but you build it from right to left. I'm not left-handed, Gary. So the first thing we're going to do is build the actual email, and we'll just keep a simple one. So we can add a new email. So this is just under the admin, under automation, we go to email actions. I'm going to create one. So we can give it a title here, and we'll say this is going to be individual. Is that right?
Yeah.
Individual event confirmation to an attendee. Okay. The from address, what's your address?
The email, sorry. The email address you're saying,
Email
sorry?
address. Yeah. Email address.
Hello.
Hello.
At Jericho Kitchen, all one word, .co.uk.
JerichoKitchen.co.uk. From name, you would like it to be?
From you?
Emma. It's always me. Or it can be either me or the Jericho Kitchen.
We like people more.
Emma. Me.
Fine. Okay. And now I have to spell your surname right.
C-O-L-L-E-N.
Okay. I'll make up the subject line. Yay. Got logged in. We can add a description, which is for internal use, and we can add preview text, but I'll leave that for the moment. So then you can start just with this blank email, or you can go and choose different templates from here. For the moment, I'm going to choose a blank template to begin with, and I then save those settings, and then I go edit the email. and I'm going to call it the same thing if my cursor will behave. Okay, so I know that I want to get rid of this, so I can get rid of all those sections. We can just add a nice image at the top.
Has that actually kept the empty template in there on the left of it, or is that just the template name?
That's
like
just
empty template.
Yeah, that's me not driving properly. There you go. So we can add an image of some description here. I don't have one. Let me steal one from your website quickly. Give me a second. What have we got? Yeah, your logo will be stealable. Yes, it is. Good. Save images. Sorry, I'm doing this on the other screen. If it looks as if it's missing. And Jericho Kitchen, save that. So I think I now have it. So I can say I want to have an image up there at the top. And then I can go and choose my image.
Which one is it?
That will load.
That's that one.
Oh, that's the logo.
Yes, that's a white logo now on a white shirt. That didn't work, did it?
No, go for the main one, the main picture.
Oh, the big picture. Yeah, that's a cool picture.
Yeah.
So that's talk amongst yourselves.
La la la.
Unfortunately, the main picture is not stealable.
What?
I can't steal your main picture off the website.
Really? That's strange. None of them.
Someone. So let's just go here.
The one with everybody sitting.
Yeah, it won't. It doesn't behave the same.
Oh.
So let's just go for
Oh.
one of these.
How funny.
All right, there's one. So I'll go and change the image. Now, it's food. Am I going to spot the food? No, that's not food. Sushi. Not the right image, but it'll give us an idea.
Yeah.
And what you can have that one there for the moment. And then I want to say, I'm going to add some text here. And if I wanted to, I could add another image. But here I can now write, I'm not going to write an email, but hi, and then I can say first name, confirming your booking, and then I can obviously carry on from there and set up more, but I'll just, you don't have to watch me write a fake email. So I'll save those settings just so that you can see where it's actually then used. Then I go close that window, and just to be sure, we save that. So we've now built our email, we've given it a name, and I'm going to steal this bit of text here. So we're not going to send a webhook. That's if you want to send something out to an external piece of software, a bit like when Gary asked about, I think it was Gary who asked about the calendar. You could use that to send stuff to Google or anywhere you like. But we're going to need a trigger action because Macanta's automation works on the basis of if this, then that. So we want to say, essentially, when there's a new booking, send the confirmation. That's sort of how it works. They're not these steps strung together. Can related tags be merged in the body of emails? By tags, I think you mean fields, and yes, any of the fields on the data object usually can be merged in. On the email section, can I set up for 3 different sub-company names and email addresses? I'm not quite sure I understand what you mean, Gary. I'll come back to your question. So the trigger action is our then that, and the trigger condition is the if this. So we've built our email, and then we're going to say a new trigger is going to say, and I always label these with the if this and the then that, the if this then in place. So then send individual events confirmation. We've got that. We're going to use events to drive it. We want to send the confirmation to the attendee who's coming. And in this instance, what I could do with the automation is update fields at the same time, but in this example, we don't need to do that, so I can leave that. So I'll save that. I'll come back to these additional fields in a moment. We just want to set up the conditions under which the if is going to run, the if this. So this is going to be if new attendee, then I can go and say, if there's a new attendee on an event, and in this end, excuse me, I wanted to restart after never, because I can only be a new attendee booked onto a particular event once. That email shouldn't repeat. If I book onto 3 events, I'll get 3 of these emails, 1 for each of those bookings, but I'll only get the confirmation email for it. So that's why we say restart after never. The relationship, I only want this to be triggered for attendees. So when I connect a chef to a booking, I don't want to send them the same confirmation as I would send for an attendee. So that's the what and the who. And then I'm going to say it is when I can go and say opt in, class type, class start. In this instance, I can just go and pick anything if opt in is yes. Okay. Now we can have different conditions. So for instance, I can have this to be a particular email that I want to send when someone books onto the knives course, for instance, because am I right in thinking that is slightly different to some of the others because I'm learning to use the tools rather than actually how to cook the meal. Is that right?
You're doing both, actually. It's a win-win class.
Fabulous. Where do I sign up? But let's say that wasn't the case, and for all the events, you've got one confirmation, but for the knives one, you want to deliver specific information. I can then say, okay, send this email only when the class type is not, and then I go and choose the mastering knife skills. Mm-hmm. So in this instance, when I connect a new attendee to an event, and the class type is not mastering knife skills, it'll send this email. I can then go and write one that's a particular version for knife skills, and then I'd come in and say, if the class type is knife skills, send this email.
Okay.
That's how you can be quite granular as to when and how, and you've also got the option to say, okay, class type is not knife skills, and or and you can layer the conditions under which this email should be sent. So let's say, for instance, we say it's mastering knife skills, and I just clicked on that twice, and the class start date and time is, let's say, 3 days. Oh, am I not typing? Thank you. 3 days. So all I need to do there, and what that will do is that will send this email, providing the class type is not mastering knife skills, and the class start date is 3 days from today.
Okay.
And then just as an example again, I then have the option to say, let's say this was a thank you to the event. Afterwards, I can then say, well, actually, send this email, providing the class type is not mastering knife skills, and the class date is -3 days, so it was 3 days ago. Then this email.
Does that have to be plural, or does it work just with day?
It works. It works with both. I tend to write it in plural just because it's just English. So you can write 3 day or 3 days. It works with both.
Which is you've written day. And also, I checked on our app, and opt-in is a capital I. I don't know if that makes a difference.
It is likely to make a difference. Is there still a hyphen?
Yeah, opt-in, no spaces.
That's fine. So I'm going to ditch this one for the moment and save that just so that I can complete that part of the setup. Click that. Yes, I think so. So now what we're going to do is string these pieces together. So let me just refresh. So remember, what we did is we built the email, we set the action that we're going to take and who for, and we set the condition. So now we'll just pull them together. The first we're going to do is we're going to go to our action, and you'll see here we've got email action, and that is now available in the list. So we can, at the same time, that's what we've allowed to do here, is I can say, if this, then
that.
Send this email, send that post to Google. We've got field actions as well, where we can update field values or run round robins and other things. So this trigger action is really, it's a thing that you can give, it's a bit like a bomber plane. You can give it a payload of things to drop when it's triggered. It's not just a single action, so you can actually achieve quite a few things just in the one go. So we have that.
So you're saving me a lot of time already.
Yep.
a lot of time.
So what I'm not sure.
You currently send confirmation emails manually, Emma?
It happens, so when they book, they get an email, but otherwise I have to do it. Okay. And like a week beforehand, I do it and send the recipes through with it and things like that. So.
Right. Yeah, so with that, you probably would have a specific email for each of the class types.
Yeah.
So that in the email you could put the recipe for each thing, would you, or not?
Oh no, absolutely, yes. So each one would get I try and make it as individual as possible each time. Yeah. If that makes sense. But yeah.
Well, I'll go back to where Jean, I believe you're watching that. If you can make a note, there's a bug. The save button isn't working in this app. If we can have a look at that in the morning. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to show you how the final setup for an email looks like out of our app. So I can go and do that. Get there quickly. And that also gives me a chance. So you've just said that you try and sort of personalize that email a bit more when they go out. So I can show you how to do that, that you can have standard information in the email, but you can have a section where for the particular client, so when it's corporate or whatever, for the particular, for the organizer, you can add a bit of text. But let me do these two things.
Being personalised for the type of class it is, or for the person?
Well, you can do both. So let's say, for instance, a corporate books for a particular class. You'll have a person, I'll come on to that, it's a separate thing. Give me a second.
Okay.
One thing at a time. So here you can see under our webinars, we've got, if the webinar date is 2 days out, send the webinar Monday morning invite. So that's how anyone attending this got the email to say, we're running this thing on Wednesday, join us on. So this sends you the link, and then 1 day send. So you go and build your actions, which you'll see we've got a list of those. You go and build your triggers, and then you marry them up. So, and you can have them in different groups, but I've then got, these are all for the webinar that we then say, if the webinar date is 2 days out, then send the webinar Monday morning invite. And you can even put a delay between the two where there are certain circumstances where that's useful. So that's just the last step that I can't show you in the other app because there's an issue with that button.
Okay.
But that's there. So then to come on to the personalization. So let's say you've got an email, a confirmation email for corporate specifically for each of the class types. But for the organizer, because if 10 people book online, there isn't really, if it's the individuals who book for the same class, you don't really have the scope to have a very personalized confirmation.
No, that's fine. No.
Whereas for corporate, you can, because what it is I've now booked, and we can then add a field to a corporate event where you can type in a personal message that gets merged into the email.
Okay.
So the event-specific, the class type-specific information is standardized, but there's a paragraph that you can insert in it that you can type. So let me show you how that would work. So for our case study, for us, this webinar is a data object. And all I'm doing, so when we're finished here, what I'll do on, I tend to do it on a Monday, is I come in and type in here the title for next week's webinar, the description, I pick the date, the guest, and the guest's business, and I click save. And that's all I have to do to then on Monday email everyone and say, this is the new webinar, this is the title. So you could have a text box like this that's merged into an email that contains the standard information that the email only sends to the organizer, providing this box isn't empty. So you can connect the organizer, you can have everything arranged, you come and type your personal message here and it gets merged into that. So it's an automated email with the standard information, but you can add that personal touch into it as well.
Brilliant. Fantastic.
So I think for you, there's a bit of sort of thinking to do about, well, what emails do I use? What do I need? What needs to go in place in what scenarios to get those built in? Does that answer your question you had, Pete?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So let me just see. Could email description, be a field in events so that the email automation setting can be more generic and the content is stored?
He's answered. He said that what you've just shown answered his question, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then was there a question from Diana, or just saying that?
No, I'll talk to her offline about that.
Okay, cool. That's fine.
Well, we've gone through a lot.
Yeah.
in less than an hour and a half. I mean, obviously there's more emails to build out, and potentially some integration to put in place between your online booking system and here.
Yeah.
but that's the meat of it, really. You've got a
Yeah.
Macanta CRM system to help you with the operational automation of your business.
My God, it's just insane. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. So
Yeah.
we can look at that, and if you're up for it, we can potentially look at doing a part 2 in a couple of weeks or so, and do that WooCommerce integration for the individual bookings.
Brilliant. Yeah.
It's quite a common platform, so it would be useful for us to have it as a case study to show how to integrate WooCommerce with
That would be
with Macanta.
fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. No, gosh, I can't thank you enough.
No, you're welcome.
Thank you, Gary and you for being so interactive. That's the one I saw, the main choice.
That's cool. So thanks, Gary. I'm glad you think we're really good.
You are.
Any other questions at this stage before we call it a night?
Not from me. I've got plenty to think about.
That's good.
Yeah. No, thank you so much.
Well, it's good night from me, and good night from him, and from her as well.
No, thank you so much. That's amazing.
You're very welcome. Just to say, when this ends, I'm not rude. I can't stop the broadcast without ending the thing for everyone. So thank you, Emma, and we'll be in touch.
Yeah, have a lovely evening.
See you same time.
Okay, take care.
Same time next week.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.